I've made the statement for a while that I consider one of the biggest trends taking place in the world over it's sort of the slow roll trends is the growth of wealth inequality. And as far as I'm concerned, this is sort of a structural thing. So I just don't think that many governments, if any, are going to meaningfully make a dent in this situation. Now, obviously there's wild cards in terms of robotics and AI and all this kind of stuff that could radically exacerbate that, or it could be deeply societally disruptive in such a way that who knows what happens, right? However, just if you look at the structure of how people accumulate wealth, there is just a tendency to have scale effect. And there are all sorts of inbuilt functions that drive and exacerbate those. So over time, I would expect wealth inequality will continue to grow. And that in itself is not like the most concerning thing. The more concerning thing is that the thing that tends to go with it is unaffordability as the middle class sort of gets eroded. And that middle class is going to pressure on their government to say, hey, listen, these guys have a lot, we don't, that's not fair, let's take from them. It's just sort of, Charlie Munger used to say that people are more motivated by envy than they are by greed. And I think there's quite a bit of truth to that. So the question then is, well, okay, you have various different trends in tax policies and all this sort of thing. Long term, where are the places that are going to be good? Will there even be tax havens left? And I was having some discussion with somebody on Twitter who was posing this question. I think that, whether you're going to have a 0% tax place or not is sort of in the too hard bucket. Like nobody can predict the future and we tend to be quite poor at it. But I was sort of in the process of thinking this through, considering something that I found sort of interesting. And it pertained a little bit to looking at changes in tax policy in the Middle East. So we've certainly seen formerly zero tax places start to add taxes. Oman, I mentioned a little while ago, is kind of pulling back on some of their stuff. Bahrain is busy trying to do something. There was some comments from one of the foreign ministers recently talking about how, hey, we need to kind of come up with better tax policies. But the thing that kind of struck me as interesting is if you sort of look at the structure of why that's happening and where that needs to end up, some places are better positioned than others. And so that was what I wanted to talk about today. Before we do that, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the all notification bell. If you're interested in optimizing your global tax, paying the lowest legal amount possible, either you want to stay in your country and you have a business, you can have remote operations, etc. Great, then you maybe want to reach out to us. Or alternatively, you're willing to relocate somewhere and you want to optimize your global tax. That's also something we help. We help people to relocate as well as to do global tax optimization, whether they're staying in place or not, dealing with all the different complexities that come with, payment processing and banking, and what are all the international treaties that matter, and what are the CFC rules, and what are the management control rules, all these different complexities that are really difficult to navigate through. We kind of are experts in that. And as a result, we help people all over to try and do this as well as possible within the bounds of the law for them. So if that's interesting, please reach out to us. You can book a call with me, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer, link in the description below, or send a message to offshorecitizen.net. Okay, so what I wanted to kind of hone in on here is this part about the structural reason that taxes need to come in. And essentially, if you look at places like Saudi Arabia, like UAE, like Oman, etc., Bahrain, Qatar, etc., the way they've been able to have these very low tax rates or zero tax rates is because they've had a lot of oil revenue or gas revenue or something similar, right? So you're able to finance your nation's prosperity through some means other than taxation. The problem is that in most cases, these are non-renewable resources. They're finite. And as you either end up in a situation where the demand for those resources declines, or your supply of those resources declines, or the cost to get at those resources goes up, meaning that margin available declines. Any of those situations, you end up in a situation where there's some sort of a revenue gap they need to close. They need to say, okay, how do I bring more money in? And so hence they introduce some sort of tax, VAT, taxes on tourism, income tax, corporate tax, whatever kind of tax it is that they decide to go with. However, there is a certain competitiveness that they're having. They want to try and jostle for some sort of control. It's probably no surprise that when UAE introduced corporate tax, it was 9%. Note, basically higher than that pretty much everywhere else in the world. Qatar is 10, Oman is 15, Bulgaria is 10. Okay, Hungary is 9, but then you have this kind of municipal tax. Cyprus is 12.5, Singapore is 17. Once you get past the small business rate, Hong Kong is 16.5. Okay, there's territoriality and things like this. 10% in Paraguay. You just run down the list of these like low tax places, and you're like, yeah, UAE is like slipping just under the bar. And it's strategic, right? They're very smart. They realize that, hey, listen, we can get something, but we're still more competitive than all these other guys. And so as a result, people will keep their companies here, not move them. If we were to go to 20%, great, we'd have a whole big exodus. And so that competitiveness is important. Now, the thing is that, you have competitive advantage. Like, what is it that allows you to be competitive? And if you look at some place like Bahrain, what have they got? They don't really have anything else aside from oil and gas revenue, right? So that's a bit problematic for them. Dubai has been incredibly wise in their foresight, looking forward and saying, hey, listen, let's build up alternatives. So Dubai has a very small percentage of GDP that comes from oil and gas. Abu Dhabi has much higher, but Dubai is like 2.5% or less than 2.5% of the income comes from oil. And what does that mean? That means they have a well-diversified set of income streams. They have a ton of tourism, right? And so they can make a lot of money off tourism. They have a situation where they have state-owned enterprises or partially state-owned enterprises that generate revenue for them in other regards. And because they're willing to attract all kinds of people, that fuels this market for them. So this, to me, when I started to do this analysis, it was like, you know what, like, it's probably unlikely that other countries over the long term are able to maintain a more favorable tax policy than Dubai is, just because of the fact that where are they going to get the money from? Like, where are they going to go? Singapore, has a bunch of income streams. They have a sovereign wealth fund. Singapore does a lot of things really well. Are they likely to lower their tax to be below UAE's? No, they're not. Is UAE likely to undercut them by being more competitive? Yeah, probably. Is Oman going to be able to do the same? No. Is Bahrain? No. Is Kuwait? No. Is Saudi Arabia? Probably not. Saudi Arabia is obviously trying to do this thing where they're investing massive amounts of money and kind of being a Berkshire Hathaway and doing that. But they have a lot more people to support, right? There's way larger population there than the UAE population. Like, the Emirati population is quite small, 10% or whatever of the country. And so that means that, the number of people they have to provide services for is not nearly as vast. And so I think this is when a person is thinking, the truth is you can always change where you move, right? You move somewhere, you can move somewhere else. Great. This being said, if I'm thinking, well, what are places that are going to probably have more stable policy in the more competitive realm long term? I'm quite bullish on Dubai. That being said, I can be wrong. So tell me what you think. Put it in the comments below. We can debate it out. And I will look forward to seeing you on the next video.